Hello, and welcome back to another episode of International Immersion. A podcast that seeks to capture the combined experiences of people, places, culture, traveling, current events, and much, much more. For today's episode, we have our guest Anton back to go over on the second part of the situation in Ukraine. In the last episode, he touched on a bit about Ukraine, its background, leading up to a lot of things that are happening now, and to get a sense of what a Ukrainian American, their sense of identity and other things. Today, we're going to go into more depth on the background of the conflict starting in 2014 and the current situation with the conflict now. So, Anton, it's great to have you back on. I'm excited to continue our discussion. I hope things are well with you and your family.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, so far so good.
It's good to hear. So, I guess to begin with, everyone knows that in 2014, this whole situation exploded in the Donbass and Luhansk oblasts on the far east of Ukraine. But we know that this just didn't happen out of the blue. There were many factors that have been percolating over the years, which have caused that. So maybe you could give a little background from your experience of the situation before 2014 and maybe leading up to what happened.
Sure. Although I wanted to notify the general public that all what I'm saying is just my personal opinion. I was born and raised in Mariupol, which is part of Donbass. It's a Donetsk region. So let me start. First, the President Yanukovych was known for let's call it even more corrupt than other presidents, because Eastern Europe is well known for corruption in the first place, but this was kind of like even more. So you want to start the business, you want to run successful business, you pretty much have to, beside paying regular government taxes and fees, you have to actually sort of bribe, and those bribes go all the way, I don't know, to the president or his or people who work with him and stuff like this. So people weren't happy with Yanukovych in the first place. Then also Ukrainian public started to think more about joining Euro Union or making more relations with Europe. And Yanukovych was at first promising that to population, and then at the very last moment he decided to postpone that some kind of agreements that would make Ukraine go European, more like towards European direction. And people got mad. First were the students from the capital started protests, and the police, heavy police force was called on those students. It turned into the mass. It wasn't like shooting or something, but some students got beaten pretty severely. And so after that, more and more general public started to say kind of like enough is enough. And it caused riots. Riots at first started just like vocal, then it turned into the fighting, and then it turned into the shooting and stuff like that.
Yeah, I remember myself, I was a senior in college when that happened. I remember watching the protests and specifically how that whole chain of events transpired. It was quite like shocking, but at the same time, with more of the background information, it is quite understandable.
After that, Russian military invaded Crimea. One day, just people woke up and the helicopters with troopers started landing on the peninsula and occupying the peninsula. They didn't have any tags on them, or whatever you call those pieces that you put, like the military puts on the shoulder, or something that can distinguish them by the country or type of forces. Just with people in the camo, and they landed on the helicopters, and there was a huge amount of them.
The forces, they had no insignias, no method of identification. So
exactly.
So basically, because I remember there was a lot of confusion, and they quickly infiltrated, all the major places in Crimea. And like you said, it was a very, very decisive action to cause confusion. And it was a lot of chaos ensued, as you know.
Mainly, they surrounded and blocked all the military locations. That's what they did. They didn't like walk around, standing somewhere else. Mainly, they were present around all the Ukrainian military locations. In United States, I guess they would be called forts. Like Fort Benning or some other fort. So they surrounded all those places in Crimea Peninsula, and then they started a referendum, which means public voting. And public voting was only with one question: would you want to join Russia? That's it. So there was no any other questions. Like, let's say, would you demand something from Ukraine, or would you want to do this or that? It was just pretty much, would you want to join Russia? That's not the best way to do the democracy on the voting, providing public with the only one question. But anyway, so they surrounded all the military locations and created that referendum. The moment the referendum was done, no international viewers or whatever it's called, like no international. So there was no any experts from Europe or anybody or any other countries to prove that the referendum was true and legal.
Like no third parties, no observation to actually see what's going on. So basically, they call it a referendum, but in many cases, it was not. It was basically, when you give a person one option, that's a demand. That's a how should you say it? That's just like, oh, you do it or you do it, no other choice.
Exactly. Then we done, good, perfect, we got our results, let's get out. And there is nobody, since it's international matter, there was no any other international experts to confirm, oh yeah, everything's been done absolutely legally and everything's cool. And you know what? It is what it is. Right after the Crimea referendum was done, people started out of a blue, some kind of riots started in the Donbas region, which is Donetsk and Lugansk states. Some people started walking with loudspeakers on the public, let's say in the downtowns of cities, and they yelling that Ukrainians are coming to, kill and hang everybody who speaks Russian, and stuff like that. And they nobody knew those people. They started this. They started, announcing stuff, almost there is something inevitable about to happen. After that, these people started to assault government facilities, the main government facilities of city, like for example the police departments, then city halls, and everything that coordinates city work, like city life. And that's how it all started after that. And they would be mainly hiding in the civilians area, like regular, regular neighborhoods. And when Ukrainian forces came to stop all this, they would start shooting to Ukrainian forces. And sooner or later, since people in those areas mainly are Russian speaking, once they saw that Ukrainian forces shooting at these people, people fell under impression that Ukrainian forces actually came to, to kill and everybody who's Russian speaking, just because they're Russian speaking. Where this came from, I have no idea. But
I wouldn't be surprised, special forces, agitators, basically you put a force together, you go in, you stir up a lot of craziness, and then you sever and basically, dissect the government institutions, city hall, the city government, the police, all the institutions, and then get the Ukrainian military or police to come in. They get in firefights, and naturally they play the people. So mass manipulation and strategic assaults, and basically blocking of institutions to create an environment where they can get the populace to go to their line.
Yeah, up to my knowledge, it's called hybrid war. When you start stirring up the some kind of differences within certain regions, and then also you supply those regions with weaponry and instructors, and sooner or later, civilian gets killed, and then you blame everything on one or the other side, and then now you got a conflict on your hand.
Yes, and unfortunately, as we know, that turned into a very to a conflict that raged throughout 2014. I actually watched a very good documentary that followed the Ukrainian army as they moved in, and basically how the fighting developed and how the eventual front line kind of solidified to where they were. But specifically, all the battles for like the Donetsk airport, there was a lot of major clashes, and it also they captured a good number of Russians and other people from other parts of the Russian Federation. So it's almost inconceivable to not, like, okay, the Russians are not here. It's like they're capturing them. They have stuff from Russia. It was very, very eye-opening.
Exactly. And the Russia all this time has been denying that they've been trying to present it like a civil war in Ukraine, even though they've been feeding it. They started these riots. They were funding it. They were supplying it with weapons. And there were a couple times in this during that war. I don't want to call it a conflict. It was a war. It just was well hidden. Well kind of hidden on the Russian side that, we don't have to do anything with that. But a couple of times when you see, if it would be just riots, Ukraine is not a small country. It's a 40 million country, and it has the military. If it would be just the local riots, they would be taken care of within a matter of a couple of weeks or something like that. Because Russia all this time was stating that the people like, it's just a war of the, people of Donbass are trying to fight for their some kind of independence or whatever, for their rights or something like that. And all what they use is what the weaponry that they got out of that region, and that region is not that rich on the weaponry. So and also let me just put some thoughts in your head. Like I know how to shoot pretty well, me personally. I'm gun owner. I'm not really enthusiast, but I guess I go to the range from time to time. But I don't have tactical knowledge how to, let's say, assault the city hall. Because it's not about shooting, it's about coming in, disarming, or shooting to kill people who guard it. Then you have to take control of it. Then you have to prepare for the backfire, like that somebody comes in to get you out of it. So you have to protect it. And it's called tactical knowledge. I don't have a knowledge like this, and I can't consider myself a stupid person. So just couple general people on the street, I don't think they're able to do it.
I would agree, and that points to that the people who started all of this or who went in there, they had a background in that type of, you could say, or had that training and the background to accomplish that effectively.
Yes, and I want to, on the same matter, I want to step back to Crimea. Crimea has to occupy Crimea, you have to do the logistics, you have to do the preparation, you have to do the strategy. And they presented it like Russia presented it, Crimea got scared that since people threw off President Yanukovych, that country got uncontrolled, and they asked Russia to come, and they asked Russia that they want to join Russia. But you know what? To come up with the logistics of that scale It's hard. I used to work for a worldwide company called Schlumberger. It's 120,000 people in 90 countries in the world. And I was the logistics coordinator and after that asset coordinator. Meant I just was coordinating equipment and people for the jobs. Like who goes where, what time, and everything. And I was doing only US land and Canada. And even that was outrageously hard and took quite a bit of preparation. And imagine to coordinate that much military, like few thousand of military, along with the equipment, weaponry, and strategy within just matter of few weeks. Good luck. It should be few years to prepare that type of invasion. So, with that being said, I think Russia's been planning to occupy Crimea forever, and the reason why, because Crimea is located on the Black Sea. Black Sea leads to the worldwide sea waters, and to have control over to lose Crimea, if let's say Ukraine turns to the European side and doesn't extend the contract with the Russian military, for example, because Russian Navy has been renting the naval base in Sevastopol, which is a city in Crimea, for ages. And I mean, not for ages, for years, for decades, I want to say. So
yeah, the Crimea is a very strategic place, and that's
it's a
one
strategy,
of Russia's
first of all.
and that's one of Russia's big goals, is always to have more access to a warm water port, and that is one of them. Even though it's restricted by by the Dardanelles, it is a very strategic point. And yeah, I think when they thought they were potentially going to lose it, they took action. And like you said, it's not something they could have done on the fly. There had to have been a lot of preparation for it.
Yeah, and my idea is that they use Donbas region. For people who don't know what Donbas, it's pretty much Lugansk and Donetsk regions. They are called Donbas. So they use
two
Donbas.
Most eastern parts of Ukraine that border the Russian Federation.
Exactly. And I think they just wanted to use it as a bargain point. It's kind of something to distract to draw attention from Crimea. Because if they really, since they say, oh, you know what, there is so many Russian speakers in Donbass and so on and so forth, but it's been 8 years and they still didn't try to accept them to Russia. The reason why, because I mean, you have to take care of that region financially, and that's a taxpayer money, and they don't want it. The only reason they wanted Crimea is because of the strategic location, because of that naval base and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and it's just unfortunate that how things developed, and then you have 8 years of fighting that came out of the Donbass and Luhansk areas between the separatists and, I mean, not to sugarcoat it, Russian or Russian troops, mercenaries, whatever you want to call them, whatever forces were brought in, and and eventually there was things have solidified up until recently, as we know, but there was some very bloody fighting, and it's claimed thousands and thousands of lives, and there was for no valid reason.
My knowledge is 13,000 Ukrainians died in that conflict on the Donbass. But let's actually call apple an apple in that war between Russia and Ukraine. Because I mentioned earlier that I don't believe that it was just a local protest, because local protests would be figured out pretty fast. But once Ukrainian military came in one of the major fights, they were smashed. And they were smashed with actual Russian military, not like Russian instructors or Russian weaponry. No, the actual Russian military illegally crossed the border, went in, and changed the outcome of that battle, and then they took off.
Well, and that's exactly because from what I understand from the sources I've read about or have seen, is that when the Ukrainian military first moved in, they were gaining a lot of ground. And basically, the Russians had to send forces in to stem that, and that's really what's allowed the both Luhansk and Donetsk rebel areas to maintain a foothold. Because without that, eventually they would have been ground down.
Yes, and it was really rough on Ukrainian forces because Ukraine was neutral country to any conflict for years, for pretty much 30 years, and actually 25 by then. 25 years, and Russia, meanwhile, had actually already three Chechen war, Georgian war, and maybe I'm missing something, but at least four conflicts that I remember right now on top of my head. So I mean, so they had the more prepared and developed military, and Ukrainian military pretty much wasn't really in a good shape. But all that started changing within the last 8 years.
Oh no, that's for sure. I know just in the last 8 years, there's been a huge amount of reorganization and upgrading that has been going on with the Ukrainian military, and it's showing itself right now with the current situation and course of events. And that leads into the next part. Is the conflict in Donbass and Luhansk. Basically, they say, oh, there's the Minsk agreements in 2015. Okay, they did that, but the fighting never stopped. It continued off and on, and it never stopped. So that is completely invalid in my opinion from the news and sources that I've seen. So, and then of course, just this February 24th, the Russians invaded, north, south, and east. So, I mean, no one can know exactly what made them flip a switch to do it. But I think that they miscalculated, or they thought they could go in and achieve everything they wanted very quickly. And it didn't turn out that way. But that's just my personal opinion. I mean, what would you say based on your opinion?
I'm thinking they expected the Ukrainian they expected, how to explain, they started believing their own lies.
I could say they drank the Kool-Aid. They were using so much of their own ideas, or you could say propaganda, that
they started to believe in it. Yes. So I think their idea was that Ukrainian population is really pro-Russian. So they really just live and dream how to be super duper buddy with Russia, and that those ideas they also thought that those ideas most likely will fly around Russian military. Like, let's say that Russian military personnel is also that way, and so sooner or later they will have. So once they invade, they will have a couple fights here and there, and then people will greet them and love them like civilians, and the military sooner or later will just start surrendering, and not just surrendering, but just kind of like join them or something like that. But to their surprise, civilians don't want them. Military is ready for them, and so it's been 40 days war, which they promised on their national channels that it will be only like 3 or 4 days. But so far it's been 40 days, and Ukraine still stands. Ukraine is beat up. I don't want to church it up. Ukraine is beat up heavily. But Ukraine resists, and resists successfully. It's just a matter of, like a city infrastructure that lots of buildings, lots of facilities, facilities that deal with water, facilities that deal with fuel. I apologize, English is not my first language, so I cannot name them correctly, but I think
no worries.
Facilities that clean water, facilities food chain places, like grocery stores. Lots of things got destroyed, so Ukraine got damaged pretty severely. But again, it proves the point that Ukrainians don't want to be neither part of Russia, neither in some kind of like a brotherhood with Russia, because otherwise they would start surrendering already, and they don't.
No, and I think the Russians had a game plan that they would send these big armored columns and these forces in. They would send these airborne forces to secure, I think, Homestead Air Base and some other places on the capital, and secure these key locations. And when that didn't work out, they didn't have a plan B to put into place immediately, because, as we know, that main thrust from Belarus down toward Kiev, it was held up for like 2 weeks. and the Ukrainians used some very brilliant tactics and caused a huge mess for them. And it really has shown that their strategy was flawed. They did not understand or even expect what's happened. And when it hit them in the face, they're still reeling from it. And now they're withdrawing from the Kiev area, as they say, to refocus on the east and the south. I mean, how much of that is true, I don't know, but they are definitely getting pushed back around Kiev. And the amount of resistance they faced is, I would say, extreme.
Yeah, that's true. They did achieve something. They took Kherson region, and they heavily. There was a pretty big conflict and humanitarian crisis in Mariupol.
Now that in of itself is just absolutely tragic.
Yes, I'm saying that not because I like it. I'm saying I hate it. I'm just saying it is a war, and it's better not to underestimate the enemy. But yes, the Ukrainian military is very motivated. Uh, there is volunteers, and I'm talking about not the volunteers who help with the food supply and stuff like that, or like some clothing for the military. No, I'm talking about volunteers who actually come. It's called, in Ukrainian, it's called teroborona. Means local people who want to join the military, but they don't have there is no time to actually fully accept them, so government just issues them a gun based, like you give your passport, and I mean, not passport, like let's say ID and social security, you get the gun. And so lines of those people are pretty big, and some people actually overage, over 60, because it's 18-60. That's the age of people that they accept. But people after 60 even come there, and they even offer bribes to let them join. But the military has to kind of send them home, I guess, or ask them to be volunteers if they want volunteers on the civilian side, because you have to how to explain, if you have an older people fighting, they have more ability to, let's say, get
they're more
injured.
physically limited in what they can do.
Yes, they're more physically limited, so that's why they have to send them home. But I know personally gentleman who actually went there. He's 63, and he was told, like, man, we can't accept you. He said, like, can I do something to be accepted? Like, and they still didn't accept him. But what they said, hey, since you bought your uniform by yourself, if you want to donate it, we'll find a fighter of your size, a younger one, and we'll just provide him, instead of just a gun, we will provide him with your full-blown clothing and armor and stuff like that. And he actually donated his body armor, his clothing. I mean, military clothing. He purchased on his own income. He went and purchased the camo, the like full-blown military clothing, along with the armor and the helmet, and he donated it.
Wow. Yeah, I remember, because I was watching one news report. They even interviewed a gentleman. I think he was around close to 60, but he was in the Soviet-Afghan War, and he was older, but he was like, basically like, I may be old now, but I'm not putting up with this. This is ridiculous. I'm defending my home.
Yeah. So, and the reason I think all this started, like the February 24th, is because Ukraine started understanding that you can't have a weak military. You cannot have weak strategy. You have to kind of become strong, to balance between East and West, and because by now, where NATO doesn't accept Ukraine. Yeah. So Ukraine kind of has, I mean, European society, Western society, Americans, they support Ukraine financially, they support with weapons, but Ukraine is not joining NATO. But Ukraine has to be strong. And I think Russians realize that Ukraine is gaining more and more military experience, military personnel, and it's either now, either never.
Yeah, that's a classic example that's happened many times in history, when a country, once it has designs on another, and once that country starts to gain in economic strength, military strength, they feel they have to do something preemptive to stop that. So I agree that, Ukraine's had 8 years of experience in the Donbass and Luhansk regions. Their military has been modernizing, upgrading, and expanding their capabilities. So I think, the Russians saw this as, we got to do something now to achieve something quick, but it's definitely turning into a bit of a quagmire for them now, I would say.
Yes, and Ukrainian military started becoming more and more profound to the point when, like some, how to explain, when they would fight, sometimes they would include the calculations also, like financial calculations. Like, let's say, can we hit this with this? No, you know what? We can achieve it cheaper way. Let's do it that way. So, I mean, that already...
The economic side of it, they thought, okay, what they took an assessment of what do we have, what forces do we have, and how can we best use them to stretch our resources and to inflict the most damage.
Yes, and it's what this war shows. It seems like Russia's doing it same way like they did in World War II. They just, we call it in our language, they are throwing meat on the guns. So it means they just like throwing their soldiers one after another, and they kind of say like, you know what, women will give birth to more one day. So who cares? And they keep just throwing their soldiers to die, and Ukrainians are trying to the way the Ukrainians fight, it's way more profound. They're just more limited in resources, in especially the sky part of it. They are limited in the air defense systems.
Yeah, and that's, you bring up a good point there, because that is something that I think has defined a lot of previous wars that Russia has been involved in. But an interesting report that I actually just read today was that a lot of the Russian equipment that's been knocked out is not, it's Soviet era, lower tier stuff. I mean, they're losing a lot of their more modern systems, like a lot of the tanks they've lost are T-72s, T-80s, T-90s, and multi-million-dollar, anti-air and multiple launch missile systems. So they're losing. So a lot of experts say that they're not just throwing crap into the fight. They're throwing some pretty good units, and they're getting chewed up.
Yes, because their soldiers don't have much motivation, and they are still, like kind of like they also still, some of them are still, like taught this old way, it's good to die for your country. Ukrainians are more and more started teaching the military idea in Ukraine is changing. It's changing from dying for your country to kill for your country, and that's different. That means come back alive. Or don't just throw yourself and die, because you have a family to take care of, you have country to rebuild, you have a job, you have I don't know, you're a full-blown citizen. Why do you want to die? So it says kill for your country, don't die for your country.
Well, yeah, that's definitely sounds better as if you're a soldier.
because people who die for their country, I mean, they're heroes. That's absolutely they're heroes. But it's time to teach them how to stay alive and achieve
so they can continue to serve their country in that capacity, not
Yes, because you actually achieve more for your country, for your family, for everyone by staying alive.
Oh, of course. And it's the thing for me is just watching it. It's just sad, not just because of what Russia's doing, what Russia and Ukraine politically, what their motivations are, but it's the human loss. It's the average Ukrainian and the person stuck in between. They're the ones that truly suffer. And as events, just the last 24 hours of what they've discovered as Ukrainian troops have been retaking more cities north of Kiev. There's some really shocking things that have come out about what's happened, especially with like executions of civilians and other things. I mean, of course, they say they can't confirm everything yet, but it's pretty obvious some very, very egregious things have been done to the civilian population in many areas.
That's what I heard as well, especially places like Bucha, European, and everybody hears about the capital. Capital is very important, but I only can imagine what's happening in Mariupol right now because there is not too much communication with Mariupol, and the things that happened there. I don't even want to imagine. I think there's something terrible happening there.
I mean, just from what I have seen and what I've been following and the information that I've got on about it, it's literally, I mean, for lack of a better way of saying it, it sounds like being in hell.
Yes, and because at first Russia started the war the way it started, they actually were shooting missiles only to the, like, let's say, first day. Mostly missiles got into the everything that's connected to military, like military bases, military. So everything what could be defined as military locations. But shortly after, their tanks and their missiles and their artillery.
Yeah, missiles, artillery, long range.
Regular city infrastructure, water facilities, city halls, regular neighborhoods, schools, even hospitals. And so they came from the once they saw that they're not going to achieve it fast. I don't know if there is a such word in English, blitzkrieg.
Yeah, it's German, but we use it commonly.
Okay, when they realized the blitzkrieg is not happening, they went to plan B, which is terrorism. So they started shooting civilians. They started shooting civilian neighborhoods, hospitals, schools, you name it.
And that is, to me, that's just, I mean, you can't steep any lower than that. It's one thing to go after military and targets that, can obstruct you or that can defend themselves. But when you go after people who cannot defend themselves and who are no threat, I can't think of anything worse than that. It doesn't matter who it is or who's doing it. It's just wrong.
Yeah, and now once they are retrieving from north, from Kiev state, from Chernihiv state, they leave in everything full of landmines and some kind of tricky explosive devices where civilians get hurt. Like right now, like city on outskirts of actually town on outskirts of Kiev called Bucha is liberated, but military still doesn't suggest civilians to come back yet, like refugees to come back yet, because they say it could be full of landmines. And the team that is a military team that is dedicated to work on landmines and explosive devices actively searching the area to make sure that it's safe to come back.
Yeah, so basically that's a classic example of covering a retreat by an opposing force. They're trying to do whatever they can to slow down the Ukrainian military from regaining and make it as costly as possible with no regard for the civilian population.
Yeah, and sounds like beside the execution of the man of certain age, sounds like some raping and some assault on women took place in those temporarily occupied areas as well.
No, I've seen the same thing from multiple news sources from different countries. And I do think that as things progress, there's going to be more and more of this, unfortunately. I don't think these are random or isolated incidents by any means.
And me personally, I don't believe that this is just some kind of isolated cases where, some retarded inbred soldier decided to do something like that. No, things like this, they have to come from the top. Because if, let's say, officers in command don't want to do it, they have instruments in place how to prevent it. They have strategies in place how to prevent it, and it's just how to explain. It's a fairy tale that somebody did it, but we don't know about it. We never would agree to it. No, It doesn't happen like that.
Yeah, either the command and control is turning a complete blind eye because they don't care, or there are orders or memorandums in place to pull it.
Exactly. And either or, they are accomplices, this case. They're accomplices or they are generators of this action. So I don't think it's just random.
No,
I think their idea changed to terror of the civilian population. So civilian population might push on the government to just agree on some kind of conditions and sign the like a peace agreement just on the conditions that are going to be damaging to Ukraine in future.
Well, and there's been a lot of comparisons of the Russians using some of the strategies they've used in Syria with bombing and other attacks against civilians to break the will of the population. So you're definitely seeing some of those methods being utilized in places like Mariupol, Bucha, Irpin, Chernihiv, Kharkiv, etc. So I think they're using what they've learned in the past or what they've done in the past. So. But I do think that it's having the opposite effect. It's only making people more willing and, I would say, fanatical in their defense.
That's true.
At least for a lot of people, I think.
It brings up even more and more motivation to fight. And why also Russian troops don't have much population, because Russia doesn't just it's not like Russia just doesn't care about some other people. No, Russia doesn't care. Russian government doesn't care about its own people as well, because half of their soldiers state that they actually were told that they're going to some kind what would that be called? Help me to find the right word.
Training exercise.
Training, yeah, military advanced training, So they lie to them. After that, they also say that they not use draft soldiers because they are like they're 18. Yeah, but that's not true. That's not true either, because what they do, they ask them to sign the contract, like let's say couple days before they cross the border, and formally they are contractors now, but in reality they were just like a draft man yesterday. So they are. So what I use my analogy. I just say they throwing meat on the guns. That's what they do.
Well, and what's even more egregious is what they're doing at Chernobyl. They've been digging trenches in the Red Forest and other areas, and there's been more evidence that a lot of their soldiers there are suffering from radiation sickness because they've been disturbing contaminated areas. And so it's just like, and they actually interviewed one of the Ukrainian, I think, supervisors for the nuclear facility there, and he said from some of my staff interacting with the Russian troops, a lot of them didn't even know what the place was. I mean, whether that's true or not, but that does raise an eyebrow.
Yeah. They don't care. That's not how they win wars. By once they cannot win war immediately, they just start throwing people like crazy, thinking like, oh, you know what, we can get more sooner or later.
Yeah, and that's just, for me personally, that's just a very sad, mentality that, but at the end of the day, there's different schools of thought. I don't think it's right, but that's just me personally.
I agree with you.
So I guess, things are transpiring, and, I think Ukraine has demonstrated that it's able to defend itself, and I just hope it continues. But I mean, from what you see and what what would you say, what do you predict will happen in the next few weeks to a month or two? I mean, no one can know. I have my own thoughts, but, from just what would you say your conjecture would be?
Oh, my ideas are based on some military analytics, military advisors. Actually, they are national Ukrainian military advisors, and what their prediction is that war might end closer to the end of April, at least like an active phase of it, and it will it will start getting more to the instead of defending, more towards what is it, like offending or whatever. So Ukraine, so it will start going the other way around, and it might get situated in some areas like maybe Mariupol or Kherson, but it definitely is gonna, the active phase of it should start shutting down between, I want to say, like 2 weeks to a month.
I see. Because one thing that has definitely been shown is that the front lines, the areas of control are starting to calcify. They're starting to solidify in areas. And I think the initiative is passing from the Russians to the Ukrainians. Plus, the Ukrainians are bringing more of their reservists up. They're getting more, troops trained. They're building up their strength to be able to push back, as they've already shown in several places. So I do think that at minimum, things will solidify in places. But I do think, there's gonna be more contention for certain areas. And I do think that the big question is, how much territory can the Russians hold on to? And also, they say they're shifting to the east. So will they deploy a lot more troops for a bigger push there, or that's yet to be seen?
I think, first of all, the troops that they retrieved from north, from Kiev and from Chernihiv, I think that's exactly the area where those troops are going to go. They're going to go to the east, to the Donbass, to Mariupol. That's what I think. So, I mean, it's too early to start celebrating. It's just, I mean,
sure.
It's good for people who are from Kiev and Chernihiv region. I mean, it's good news. But as far as the whole nation goes and the whole country knows, it's too early to celebrate, and it's better to be prepared every day.
And I agree. I do think that the area on Kiev is stabilizing. I think those people, while they will not be able to let their guard down anytime soon, it's going to be a little easier for them. But I do think that other places in the east and the south, it's really just beginning, and there's going to be continued. And I think in whether it's active or more sporadic, those areas are going to continue to face conflict for, I'd say, for quite some time.
Yeah, that's what I think.
But I mean, we can all think positive and hope that it will end soon. But at the same time, there's also just the realism of the situation, as we've been seeing, and knowing what the Russians are wanting. They're not, like you said, they're not going to give up until they've exhausted literally every ability they have.
And they are already exhausting at some points, because they had some what they say, peacemakers in the other countries surrounding Russia, and they are withdrawing them already to use them in this conflict. That speaks a volume to me, means that they are already exhausting. They are far away from being fully exhausted, but it's not like they are on their best.
Well, exactly. And just the number of losses, I mean, which are just very sad in terms of human life, but it's the estimations of what the Russian army has lost in terms of personnel is actually quite staggering. From even the low end, on the low end, it's quite high. On the high end, I think it's easily passed up the Soviet-Afghan war, which lasted a decade.
Yeah, the national prediction that it's around 17,000 on their side.
It's just crazy to think about, and it's just tragic, because how many of those people wanted to be there, or understood what the situation was. That's just, like I said earlier, it's the human toll that's really the tragedy of this.
Yep, it is tragic. It's very tragic. It's tragic to the point when I see the pictures. I've been to Ukraine with my wife in June of 2021, and it's kind of almost hard to believe that that's a reality.
Yeah,
I mean, like that, like to see, not just to know that there is a war, to see the outcome of it, to see destroyed cities, to see destroyed lives, to see all this huge holes in the ground from bombing and stuff. It's it's pretty hard to believe that you just been there like half a year ago and you enjoyed it, and you that we took some tours around the capital, and we're enjoying the national monuments and stuff like that, and now that half of it is destroyed.
Yeah, I can't imagine just kind of the sense of like, wow, this is happening. I was here at this time, and now what's going on here? Literally, like you said, less than barely, barely 6 months, after. But no, I really appreciate you giving us your point of view and your perspective on what's happening, in Ukraine. I guess, and we touched on this the last time we talked, but going a little further, what are things that people like me or other Americans or people around the world, how else can we help in any capacity? I mean, I know people are donating things. I know some people are actually going there to help or even fight. But I mean, an average person, what would you say, like, how can they help?
There are ways. First one is to start sending emails to your senators. Ideally, as more higher level senator is better. Congressmen, but better senators, I guess, to ask them to support within the American government idea of helping Ukraine to get old Soviet Union jet fighters from NATO countries, countries like Poland, at least, because there is some hesitation. Poland is ready to provide those. They are Soviet Union MiG-29 fighters, but the Ukrainian Air Force is well trained on those, and we have more pilots than we have machines. So if we simply can even get our hands on those old MiG-29s, we're going to be able to close around sky. Before that, we were asking for help to use United States Patriot systems to fight to close Ukrainian sky, to provide some defense in the sky. But there is pretty solid understanding that this is too much to ask for, not even financially. That type of help would potentially start the World War III. We don't want that. But this MiG-29s, this is kind of like compromising idea that United States can push to, I use the word lobby. I don't know if lobbying is.
No, that's a great word. Yeah.
That we need US senators to lobby more and more that idea of so far 42 United States senators signed that petition to provide MiG-29s to Ukraine. And as faster that happens, because city of Mariupol, the problem of city of Mariupol is that, you see, it's a flat. It's like Texas. All that area, miles and miles around, hundreds, I mean, not hundreds, but at least, or maybe even hundreds miles, it's flat. So you can't hide military there. And if you start moving tanks and military support that way, it's easy prey for Russian Air Force and Russian artillery. But if we have more strength in the sky, which means those MiG-29s, we actually can start defending, and we can start moving troops across the flat towards the Mariupol, towards Donetsk, towards Kherson. So that's what we need. So a regular citizen can simply start. I actually even found a couple emails, I believe, that they can use. Let me find them real quick for you.
Perfect. I'll make sure to list them in this episode's description for anyone who listens.
Yeah, I guess in order not to hold the air, I'll just send them to you after we're done with the interview. That's first thing. To push on the senators to sign the petition to the government to provide MiG-29s from Poland to Ukraine. Second thing, please donate if you don't mind. I don't want to beg for it, but if you interested, as I said, even $10, $20, anything helps. My favorite website is rs Romeo Sam Ukraine.org. rsukraine.org. You simply hit donate. There is a button right when you open it. There is a button to donate. You can donate, and mostly that people from volunteers that are associated with this website are providing Ukrainian people with medical supplies, Ukrainian volunteers who want to fight with body armor and helmets. This is if some people are against guns, these volunteers they don't help with the guns or weaponry. They help with the protection and medicine. This is what they're heavily helping with. What else? And you can also send emails to the government, to the senators, to the president, to White House, you name it, local congressmen, about letting Ukrainians who are American citizens invite their immediate family, like let's say mom and dad, children, husband and wife, like this type of immediate family to the United States, because so far it seemed like United States started some simplifying the process for immediate family to come to Ukraine, to United States. But it's not, there is still ways to go. It's still, you never know. Like my mom actually has an interview in Munich on April 7, and I'm US citizen since 2013, and I don't know if she's going to get the visa. I'm not asking for refugee status for her, like for United States taxpayer to hold, like to provide her with something. No, I can do it myself. But I at least need a visa for her. And if I wanted to start to bring her to United States as a family reunion, I could do that process, but she doesn't want a green card. She doesn't want to live here. Not like she's something has against the United States. She loves her country. She wants to be there. She's an older person who knows everything there and doesn't know nothing here. And all I want is for her to stay in peace for next couple months until the active phase starts dying down. And that's what you also can help with. So 3 things. First, send emails to the government, to local and national congressmen, senators, and even president to lobby the MiG-29 transfer to Ukraine. Second one, rsukraine.org. And the third one is you can send the petition, or like even simple emails to politicians to ask Ukrainian citizens who have dual citizenship, which means who have American citizenship and immediate family in Ukraine, to allow them to bring. We will take care of our family by ourselves. We don't need a lot of taxpayers to worry about it, but we need at least the ability to be able to bring them, because I simply really don't know if my mom will be let in to the United States on April 7th. I have no idea.
Well, I hope she is, and I hope that they approve her visa. And like you said, a lot of people don't want to relocate; they just want to come here for a short period of time until things quiet down, which is completely understandable.
Yes, and that's what we really need. So, thank you everybody for listening, and I don't know if you have any questions or you want to do the volume 3. I hope we do it after the war ends.
Me too. I really hope that happens. That I really appreciate your insight, your opinions, and your perspective on it. Of having coming from Ukraine and now living in the U.S. and having relatives, as you mentioned, who are there. I think it gives people a deeper insight, because you can learn about something, you can see something, but when you know someone from a place, or you have connections there, it's just a total different perspective and experience to actually hear it from someone, or from someone who knows someone who's there, because it puts things into much more clear context, and also emotionally and psychologically as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, Anton, I appreciate it. Like I said, I'd love to do a part 3 with you sometime, and I hope it's after this ends. But regardless, I just, it's great to have you on. I really appreciate all the information you've provided to me and everyone who listens to this podcast. And my goal is to continue to raise more awareness and to present information of what's going on in Ukraine.
Thanks, Sean.
All right. You have a good one, sir. Take it easy. And thanks again. This has been another episode of International Immersion. Feel free to reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, the same name. Send us an email, internationalimmersionpodcast@gmail.com. And I will also provide all the information that Anton has listed for how you can help Ukraine. And let's keep going, and let's pray that the situation in Ukraine continues to improve and that things can get back to a situation where there will be no more conflict in that region.